Good morning, Europe. Welcome to the program. Our top stories for you. Bracing for the worst. Donald Trump and his NATO allies prepare for a tense summit after a sharp exchange of words. And over in the Cube, our social media news desk.
From a Cold War alliance to that war of words, we'll show you how relations between the US president and NATO got where they are.
Mission accomplished, relief and celebration as the last of the 12 young footballers and their coach emerged after an incredible rescue from a flooded Thai cave. Brexit exits. 2 more Tories resign in protest at Theresa May's soft Brexit plan as she struggles to reassert her authority. And Donald Trump even waded in. And one step closer to victory. Fans erupt in cheers as France make it through to the World Cup final, the first time in 12 years. Thank you for starting your morning with us today. Our top story this hour, the NATO summit gets underway today, and the alliance's leaders are already making the headlines. Air Force One had not yet touched down in Brussels when the U.S. President Donald Trump took to Twitter to take a swipe at the European Union and his NATO allies. Well, the EU Council President Donald Tusk responded with a stinging rebuke, setting the stage for what are expected to be fractious talks. Evelyn Laverick has this story.
Air Force One makes a smooth landing in Brussels, carrying the US president and his wife, but his allies in Europe are bracing themselves for a considerably bumpy ride at today's NATO summit. Even as Donald Trump was winging his way over the Atlantic, he hinted he might just ask for his money back if more members don't hit the alliance's target of spending 2% of GDP on defence. Before flying to Brussels as part of a 4-day trip to Europe, Trump raised the money issue, but there was also a twist in the tale.
We pay far too much and they pay far too little, but we will work it out. So I have NATO, I have the UK, which is in somewhat turmoil, and I have Putin. Frankly, Putin may be the easiest of them all. Who would think? Who would think?
It's that relationship with the Russian president which is worrying some, and it provoked this warning.
Dear America, appreciate your allies. After all, you don't have that many. And dear Europe, spend more on your defense, because everyone respects an ally that is well prepared and equipped. Money is important, but genuine solidarity is even more important.
European NATO leaders are expecting Trump to lecture them for failing to increase defence spending, but the worry is he may go further. He could cancel US participation in one or more NATO exercises or delay the deployment of more troops and equipment to Europe. Trump could also, without any prior consultation with NATO allies, strike a deal with Vladimir Putin when he meets the Russian president next week. It's being billed as an unpredictable summit, but one thing is for sure, top of Trump's agenda is more commitment from allies to take on a bigger role and do more within the alliance. Evelyn Laverick, Euronews.
Our correspondent Brian Carter is following events closely from Brussels, and he's joining me now live. Brian, we've already seen a war of words, and it hasn't even begun. What can we expect today from the NATO summit?
Well, for starters, heavy security. You haven't seen this level of security in Brussels since the lockdown of 2015. According to the Belgian authorities, 2,500 policemen and 1,000 soldiers have been mobilized to ensure the security of this meeting, to ensure the security of the leaders. As you can see in this area behind me, that's where the leaders will have their dinner tonight. It's been closed to the public and there's heavy police presence everywhere. And just as Donald Trump disrupted the city traffic, he's expected, as you heard, to disrupt the official agenda, which is supposed to talk about cybersecurity, common defense, deterrence, etc. But the European leaders are bracing for the worst. They all remember the meeting here last year where he scolded them about defense spending. And everybody here is wondering if he could go further this time. We spoke with Thomas Valasek. He's a researcher at Carnegie Europe, and he's also the former representative of Slovakia to NATO. Take a listen.
Of 2018 is different from the Donald Trump of 2017. He's grown more comfortable in his skin. He is more willing to challenge the status quo, consequences be damned. He is less restrained by people around him. In fact, the new people around him, whether it's Mike Pompeo at the Department of State or John Bolton in the National Security Council, if anything, seem to be urging him, egging him on, rather than restraining him. So, the NATO heads and the ambassadors are braced for quite a tough summit.
Yeah, exactly. And you heard it as well before in the story. You heard the crucial issue here is money. The U.S. spends about $600 billion per year on defense. That's twice what the other members of NATO spend together. And Donald Trump has expressed his anger over this many times. There's a distinction here to be made, an important distinction. On the one hand, you have the budget for NATO, which is to ensure the day-to-day activities. And here all the members pay their fair share based on the calculation based on GDP, population, etc. But what Donald Trump is aiming at is the 2% target, which is a pledge that the allies made in 2014, that by 2024 they would reach 2% of GDP on defense spending. Now, only 8 members of NATO respect that target this year, and most members have increased the defense spending, but it's not going fast enough for Donald Trump. And now this 2% target is not just a symbolic target that it is easy to explain, but it also has an important value, as Thomas Valasek will explain right now.
The Allies don't spend 2% on building national forces. They are not going to have enough tanks, enough ships that NATO needs to put together in sort of a coherent force for its operations. So yes, the Allies can easily meet all of their commitments to the narrowly defined NATO defense budget. But that again just pays for basically the buildings. It pays for the electricity, the copy machines at the headquarters. It doesn't pay for the forces that Allies put into operations. That comes out of the nationally spent defense budgets. That's why the 2% are important.
And of course, the fear here is that Donald Trump will use the troops here in Europe as a bargaining chip to force the other allies to spend more. There are roughly 60,000 U.S. men and women in uniform here in Europe. And if he decreases their number, that could destabilize the power forces here in Europe, destabilize the region. Now, some say that fear is overblown. After all, Russia is not the USSR, and Russia's defense spending is lower than all the non-US NATO allies put together. But some say that if you look at Ukraine, if you look at Georgia, that indeed Russia is still a danger. And of course, knowing that Donald Trump will meet with Vladimir Putin next week in Helsinki, the big question is, what will they say, what will they decide, and will Vladimir Putin have the last word?
All right, thank you for that, Brian Carter. Big day ahead there in Brussels. Thanks. So how did President Trump and his NATO allies end up at this stage? Relations at the moment, it's not so friendly. Well, Alex has been following this story for us. Alex.
Not so friendly, Tessa, and there's a key moment many of you might remember from the last time we saw the NATO leaders gathering. Remember this moment? Donald Trump appearing to push past the Prime Minister of Montenegro. There you go. There goes the push. And then he adjusts his suit to go to the front of the group. This was during a tour of NATO's new headquarters. Now, whether he was pushing past him or helping himself through, people have debated this image to death on social media. Well, it's making a reappearance now, needless to say, because of the tone of discussions ahead of this latest NATO summit. Let's remind ourselves of what Donald Tusk is saying. Donald Tusk, President of the European Council, he has pinned this tweet to the top of his profile, and he's directed it directly at Donald Trump, saying, "Dear Donald Trump, the US doesn't have and won't have a better ally than the European Union." And in this tweet, he says that the money the EU countries are spending is on defense. But there's a thinly veiled threat here saying that Russia and China, their defense spending, might not be so defensive. I mean, that's what people are reading into this tweet on social this morning. Also then ending it with this, we can have a look at this here. Rather strange thing to see at the end of a tweet like that, a smiley face. So, I mean, needless to say, the tone on social media is a little confusing with this discussion. Donald Trump being very clear, conflating, some say, discussions about trade with discussions about defence spending. Here saying the European Union expects the US to defend it, but it makes it impossible for farmers and businesses to work there. So there's a real tense war of words between allies here. And the New York Times, in an opinion piece, reminding people that on the campaign trail, Donald Trump described NATO as obsolete. Now, that is a phrase that we are seeing people pointing out and saying Donald Trump doesn't appear to be all that in favour of NATO ahead of this meeting. So who is the president going to this meeting? Is he the one who is wanting a strong, stable alliance, or is he the man who wants to describe the alliance as obsolete? Needless to say, division of opinion on social. Some people really standing up for America's strong stance. This is playing well among America's support base. Here saying, Trish saying the Liberals are losing their minds just because America is asking people to pay their fair share. So needless to say, it's a divisive issue. What do you think? Is Donald Trump simply asking for people to pay their fair share, or is he out of line? You can let us know using #TheQ.
Thanks for that, Alex. I love how politicians are now all taking to Twitter to get their thoughts out.
Absolutely.
Indeed. Thank you for that. Now, there have been 2 more resignations over Theresa May's Brexit strategy, and then even Donald Trump waded into the chaos. Speaking before he headed to that NATO summit we're talking about, he said Britain was in turmoil, though he only had good things to say about the former Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson.
Boris Johnson's a friend of mine. He's been very, very nice to me, very supportive. And I maybe will speak to him when I get over there. I like Boris Johnson. I've always liked him.
Should Theresa May remain in power?
Well, that's up to the people. I get along with her very well, have a very good relationship. That's certainly up to the people, not up to me.
So May's political survival may be up to the British people, but it will also require her to keep her own Conservative Party on side. I'm joined by Vincent McAvenny in London for all the latest on this. Vincent, how is she managing right now?
Good morning, Tessa. Well, Theresa May has a knack for surviving, and that rapid cabinet reshuffle on Monday seems to have secured her in number 10 for now. She even tweeted a photo yesterday from the cabinet meeting with a caption saying, "Everyone there just getting on with a busy week at work." Well, there are some, though, who are deeply unhappy with Theresa May, and it requires 48 of her own MPs to sign letters of no confidence in her to try to start a leadership challenge. Now, one Tory MP, Andrew Bridgen, has put his head above the parapet and said he has signed a letter. He's published it saying that the plans that Theresa May has unveiled are capitulation to the EU, and he thinks there should be a leadership challenge. Here's what he had to say.
Meeting last night of the ERG, led by Jacob Rees-Mogg, where well in excess of 60 MPs expressed their displeasure at the policy laid out by the Prime Minister at Chequers. How many of those want to have a leadership election at this time? It's not convenient. In my view, I think the only way to hold the country together is to stop this policy, and I think that's going to require removal of the Prime Minister.
Well, Andrew Bridgen there saying that he does have the level of support to try to bring about this leadership challenge. So why aren't they doing it? Well, firstly, it's a matter of timing. As we heard, Donald Trump on his way over, he's aware that something is going on, and the UK needs a big trade deal with the US. So these MPs know that they can't have Theresa May fighting for her job at the same time as she's hosting the US president. The other issue, they need a leader. That is, in their minds, Boris Johnson. But so far, he has stayed low after resigning on Monday. He needs to come up with some kind of plan because he'd have to convince 159 MPs to support him to replace him as the Prime Minister.
All right, thank you for that, Vincent McAvenny, bringing us the latest as this all unravels. Well, it's been one of the most turbulent and chaotic 48 hours faced by any British Prime Minister in living memory. But Theresa May is still in power. So will the resignations derail her Brexit negotiation, or can the Conservative Party still unite around their leader? Well, let's talk to Jack Blanchard. He's the head of Politico's London Playbook. Jack, a very interesting happening here right now in London. How likely do you think it is that Theresa May will be able to get her soft Brexit plan ahead?
Well, it's very difficult to see exactly how Theresa May does proceed. She's kind of stuck between two posts at the moment. She doesn't really have the majority in Parliament for what she wants to do, but and her MPs are against it, but they don't have the numbers to force from power, as Vincent was just saying. So it's very difficult to see how the UK is going to proceed at the moment. Theresa May might end up having to rely on votes from the opposition party, the Labour Party, to try and get her Brexit plan through.
Yeah, and she has managed to cling on, though, in terms of her leadership challenge, and she's just hanging on. But do you think this can continue?
Yeah, it looks like it. The Tory rebels are growing in number, and they're certainly not happy with her and the way she's proceeding with a softer Brexit plan. But they just don't have the numbers to force her from power at the moment. They need 159 MPs to vote against her in a vote of confidence. And they just don't have that at the moment. So for all the noise, and we've seen more resignations last night, and I suspect we will see more through the week, if Theresa May decides she's staying there, I don't think there's very much they can do to dislodge her at the moment.
Yeah, what's happening to her at home? Do you think this has significantly weakened her negotiating power with the rest of the EU?
That's a very interesting question. There is a theory that actually this is in a way strengthening her position, because the last thing the EU wants to do is force Theresa May from power altogether. They don't want to risk a hard Brexiteer taking over and completely changing the dynamic of the negotiations at this stage. And so there is a theory that her weakness is actually a strength, going back to Brussels and saying, look, you see what's happening with my party, you see how hard it was for me even to get this plan agreed. Now you need to come forward and say yes to this, because if you don't, it's very difficult to see how things are going to play out in the UK for me.
All right, thank you very much for that. Jack Blanchard, head of Politico's London Playbook. Thank you. And still to come for you on Good Morning Europe, relief as all 12 Thai boys and their football coach are rescued safely. We'll be live from Chiang Rai in Thailand. And at the World Cup, the French football team broke Belgian hearts and booked themselves a place in the final on Sunday. More on that after the break. Top story on Good Morning Europe. The NATO summit gets underway today in Brussels. Now, before landing, U.S. President Donald Trump took to Twitter to take a swipe at the European Union and his NATO allies. The EU Council President Donald Tusk responded with a stinging rebuke, setting the stage for what are expected to be fractious talks. As the 12th boy and his coach were rescued from a flooded cave in Thailand, it brought to an end an international aid effort that lasted almost 3 weeks. Well, the world has been gripped as divers worked around the clock to bring the boys to the surface. NBC's Bill Neely reports on how it all unfolded.
Free at last. Lifted gently, saline drips attached, one small boy's nightmare is over. Behind him another, the daylight so bright their faces were covered with blue cloth. Today's rescue of the final four and their coach was the fastest.
Well, these boys have had the longest ordeal, 17 nights in the cave.
The rescue commander cheered by the world's media. We finished, he said, what no one ever thought we'd achieve. The Thai Navy SEALs asked if it was a miracle or science. These the last four to leave the cave.
You must be very tired, yes?
And they left exhausted. Doctors overjoyed.
Very happy, very happy.
Divers overcome with relief and emotion, celebrating with a beer.
We feel very happy. Now we need beer and we need sleep.
They had risked their lives.
Good day. It was a very good day.
Yeah. Their bodies cut.
It was a tough week, a couple of weeks. Yeah.
Happy?
Happy.
Cave mud everywhere. It's 8 days since the boys were discovered trapped in the dark.
13. Brilliant.
The trigger for a daring, dangerous rescue. Success seeming unlikely. Rescuers have cleared rocks, drilled passages, and worked up to their necks in water to make this rescue possible. One Thai diver losing his life. The boys, weak in body, were strong in spirit and so brave, diving for hours to escape to a victory today, snatched from the jaws of a cave.
That was Bill Neely reporting there. And live from Chiang Rai is NBC News' foreign correspondent Matt Bradley. He's joining us now from the hospital where the boys are recovering. Matt, good to see you there. I mean, imagining what the boys went through. They really are resilient, very strong young boys. What do we know of their condition right now?
Well, Tessa, we just got more information on the status of the boys, and I don't know if you've been following the story, you know that this has been going in 3 different waves. There was the first one on Sunday, those first 4 boys, then on Monday, and then on Tuesday were the last 5. 4 boys and their coach. Now, each one of them is at different stages of recovery. Thai officials, they're not taking any chances, even now that the boys are out of the cave. That's why all of them have been sequestered. They're not even allowed to touch their parents. Now, this must be devastating for their parents who, wasn't so long ago, had plenty of reason to believe that their children were going to be dying in that cave. Now they can't even reach them. So basically, in this hospital behind me, the first set of boys are now able to talk to their parents in person. But their parents aren't allowed to touch them, and they have to go up to them wearing essentially gloves and sort of booties, hospital scrubs, because they're worried, the doctors are worried that the boys could contract infections from their parents because of the time that they spent in the cave, because of the time that they had without water and food. So this is a major concern. The second set of boys have been behind glass barriers, and they are now later today, the doctors say they may be able to actually meet their parents in the same way, approaching them from a 2-meter distance, still wearing hospital scrubs. That group of boys and the coach who were rescued just yesterday, they're still only able to see their family members and visitors from behind a glass wall. So again, a lot of the boys, they really are, as you mentioned, resilient. They are not actually experiencing any major serious medical complications, and that's really remarkable considering the trial that they went through, more than 2 weeks in that cave. There's been some problems with heart rates, some signs of pneumonia for some of the boys, but for the most part, really, they're out of the woods, and that's remarkable considering much has happened here. Tessa?
All right. Thank you for that, Matt Bradley, updating us on the condition of the 12 boys and their coach there. Thank you. And still to come for you on the program, a German neo-Nazi murder trial reaches its climax. A court in Munich is due to deliver its verdict. And over in the Cube,
it was France's night last night. They're through to the World Cup final, but who will be facing them? We'll have the story for you after a short break.
You're watching Good Morning Europe. Welcome back to the program. Now our next story. One of the most important neo-Nazi trials ever seen in Germany is set to reach its conclusion this morning when a Munich court gives its verdict on the case against Beate Schäpe. She is accused of murdering 10 people in a terror campaign that targeted ethnic minorities. Schäpe is said to have been a leader of the far-right group, the Nationalist Socialist Underground, which is accused of carrying out a series of nail bombings, murders and bank robberies between 2000 and 2007. Well, I'm joined now from Munich by investigative journalist Jacob Kushner, who has been following the case closely. Jacob, this is really getting huge in Germany. Why is it seen as being so important over there?
The case has been getting lots of attention just because of the severe nature of the violence against ethnic migrant men. So there were 9 men murdered of Turkish and Greek background over a number of years. And so the question is, has Germany dealt with the racist elements of its past, and are authorities prepared to deal with, prepared to protect the many immigrants who have come to Germany in recent years?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that really came out in this case is the fact that authorities were not very quick to see the pattern, and therefore a lot more of those killings happened. What has been the update on in terms of the authorities being ready for such cases?
That's right. There's accusations against police and intelligence agents that they missed, they did in fact miss what was going on during these murders. Many people accused the institutions of institutional racism. As the murders were occurring, police officers lied to families of the victims, accusing the murdered men of being drug dealers or involved in Turkish mafia. Intelligence agents paid thousands of Deutschmarks to informants that did not lead to any actionable intelligence. So there are these accusations that Germany's institutions acted with racism and that prevented them from solving the crimes at the time. Now, today, as Germany has so many more immigrants than before, the question on everybody's minds is, can police and can the intelligence services protect these new immigrants here in Germany where they are? Or are they bound to repeat the mistakes of the past if those police officers and intelligence agents themselves are not prosecuted for their mistakes in the past?
And Jacob, just very quickly, I mean, how have the public been reacting to this? It's not just on the case, but also the broader question of treatment of immigrants in the country.
Yes, as you can see, there are hundreds of people lining up outside of the courthouse today to hear the verdict. It comes at a timely moment when immigration debates are raging here in Germany. And, after I think Germany has gained a reputation here as a welcoming place for many immigrants. And so the question on many people's minds is Germany prepared and able to protect those immigrants now that they're here?
All right, thank you for that, Jacob Kushner there reporting in Munich, an investigative journalist following the case for us. Thanks. Now to sport. Well, France have beaten Belgium to secure a place in the World Cup finals. Oh, Alex has been following all the social media reactions. Alex.
Well, Tessa, I don't think many people in France got any sleep last night based on my experience of the mood in the streets. Honking horns, people celebrating as France beat Belgium and are now through to the final. Well, Antoine Griezmann, a scene you might expect on the pitch, celebrating that win against Belgium. Belgium going to this, a very strong team, and France's win against them is a very tense match. You could hear the gasps as both sides were obviously wanting so desperately to reach the World Cup final. France could be on course to win the first World Cup in 20 years for their side. So there's a lot riding on this. So the celebration and the tense mood on the pitch you might expect. What perhaps people were a little surprised by is just what was going on the street. This video tweeted by the mayor of Paris. It shows people along the Champs-Élysées celebrating. You can see smoke and flares, people really getting in the mood. But later on, things weren't quite so well-tempered. Let's just show you a video shared later on which shows a fire on the Champs-Élysées. Police, we saw in reports, having to clear people off of the streets as celebrations got a little out of hand. You can see here fire crews having to deal with this. And it wasn't just in Paris. Here in Lyon, our very own correspondent, Stephanie, was here in Lyon, as I say, trying to sleep last night and showing videos of people on the streets well into the night, shouting and celebrating. And in Belgium too, it wasn't just in France. Obviously, Belgium not celebrating a win, but having to come to terms with losing out on the chance to be in the final. Well, a Flemish member of the parliament, a Flemish politician there, arrested, he says, for picking up a flare. The Belgian authorities saying they took a zero-tolerance approach to anybody lighting flares in the street. Well, he said he picked it up because of a fire risk and was later arrested. But despite the evening he had, despite the Belgian loss, he said he was still proud of his national side. So with England playing tonight against Croatia, France will be very keen to know who they'll be facing in Sunday's final. Tessa.
Indeed, I'd like to know that as well. Thank you for that, Alex and Q. Now, a UK data watchdog says it will fine Facebook €500,000 for a scandal in which it failed to protect its users' data. According to the British Information Commissioner's Office, the social media giant failed to ensure that data mining company Cambridge Analytica had deleted users' data. Well, the ICO said that Facebook failed to intervene when its users' information was obtained and sold on for targeted political advertising. Police in Pakistan say at least 13 people have died after a suicide bomber detonated a blast at an anti-Taliban rally in the northern city of Peshawar. The attack also saw political candidate Haroon Bilur killed as he was getting ready to speak. Bilur's Awami National Party had previously been a target of Islamist militants due to its vocal opposition to the Taliban. Now, after 9 years at Real Madrid, footballer Cristiano Ronaldo is to join Juventus, transferring to the Italian team for a cool €105 million. Well, Ronaldo will become one of the 4 most expensive footballers of all time. He leaves behind 451 goals across 438 games. And we'll be back with all of your top stories, including more on that really tense NATO summit that will be happening in Brussels today after a tense exchange of words. Plus, more on that incredible rescue of the 12 boys and their coach from a Thai cave. We'll find out more about how they're doing right now. And of course, World Cup. It was most definitely France's night. They've secured a spot in the World Cup final. But before that, let's take a look at today's no comment from London, where the Royal Air Force celebrated its centenary with a very colorful flypast involving 100 planes. Top stories and Good Morning Europe racing for the worst. Donald Trump and his NATO allies prepare for a tense summit after a sharp exchange of words. Mission accomplished, relief and celebration as the last of the 12 young footballers and their coach emerged after an incredible rescue from a flooded Thai cave. And one step closer to victory. Fans erupt in cheers as France make it through to the World Cup final, the first time in 12 years. And back to our top story. Even before the NATO summit got underway, the alliance's leaders were making the headlines. Air Force One had not yet touched down in Brussels when the U.S. President Donald Trump took to Twitter to take a swipe at the European Union and his NATO allies. Well, the EU Council President Donald Tusk, he responded with a stinging rebuke, setting the stage for what are expected to be fractious talks. NBC correspondent Hans Nichols sent this report from the White House.
What's clear from here at the White House as well as the Pentagon is that President Donald Trump is looking forward to a fight with NATO, what others might call allies, what President Trump says maybe freeloaders. When you look at the telegraphing the language from this White House as well as the Pentagon, it's clear that they don't like how little they think NATO is spending. The question about this summit on Wednesday is whether or not there will be a real fight or a fake fight. And when you look at some of the language coming out of Europe, especially the comments on Tuesday from Donald Tusk, it looks like the Europeans may actually gig Donald Trump into a real fight. What do I mean about a real fight? I mean a fight that has consequences, that maybe presses some people inside the Trump administration to give a better argument to Donald Trump on why he wants to withdraw from NATO. It will actually give him tangible and concrete arguments. So when you look at what's being considered, potentially drawing down troops from Germany, there's some talk about sending additional troops to Poland. These have real consequences. And inside the Trump administration, there's a great deal of frustration with the Europeans, and not just about how much they spend, but how much they contribute. Yes, they do contribute to the NATO mission, say, in Afghanistan, but not enough. And every time U.S. Secretaries of Defense go to NATO, to Brussels, whether or not it's this administration or the previous one, they never seem to be getting the kind of troop-level commitments that they want. Now, just over the weekend, there's a reminder here in the States how dangerous Afghanistan is. There's the third combat death of the year. But you go back to the previous friendly fire incident, so-called green on blue. Who actually died there? Romanian soldiers. So the challenge for Europeans is going to convince that Donald Trump that they do more than just how much they spend as a percentage of their GDP, but they're actually contributing to fights that matter for global security and U.S. security. But President Trump isn't necessarily willing to hear that argument, and there are people inside of his administration that have these isolationist tendencies. Secretary Mattis is not one of them, but there will be an internal fight within the U.S. administration on just how to make sure Donald Trump continues to abide by international commitments at NATO. Hans Nichols, NBC News for Euronews at the White House.
To Thailand now, where after a 2-week ordeal, all of the boys and their football coach are in hospital after being freed from an underground cave. But what will happen next to the boys who haven't seen their families or even the sun in over 2 weeks? NBC's Janice Mackie-Freyer has this report.
The hospital, where crowds erupted, cheering the final ambulance's arrival. The 12 boys and their coach in good health, doctors say. 2 have minor lung infections. All will be quarantined for up to a week because of high risk of illness. Their families can see them through windows, but not touch them. Some have spoken on the phone. In 48 hours, the boys' families can visit in gloves and gowns, but keep their distance.
They're quarantining them for a couple reasons. One is so these children don't spread any disease to anybody else, because we really don't have that much data on what happens inside a cave when there's children there for weeks on end.
The danger is mainly diseases transmitted by bats and fungal infections from soil or water. And after days in the dark, all of them are wearing sunglasses around the hospital to protect their eyes. These kids are soccer players and are healthy and strong. They have high immune systems, said doctors. Psychologists say they're in good mental health, but could face challenges like anxiety or depression. The 25-year-old coach, a former novice monk, credited with keeping the boys alive. For the most part now, they're just really hungry. Each of the boys down 5 pounds. They're stuck eating bland food for now, but asked doctors for chocolate, a wish that was granted.
Janice Mackie-Freyer reporting there from Chiang Rai. And joining us live also from Chiang Rai is journalist Tony Cheng, who's been following this story closely. Tony, thank you for joining us today. You were one of the first journalists on the ground. You've spoken to a lot of people who knew the boys. You've also spoken, I believe, to the coach's aunt. What did she have to say?
She was naturally very, very happy that he's out, that he's safe. She hasn't yet spoken to him. He's in the hospital. She thinks she'll be able to speak to him in the next couple of days. She was in Chiang Rai last night. She came back home here to Mesai where she lives, close to these caves. But she was enormously relieved. She said the parents were enormously relieved. She told us of the ordeal that they'd all gone through. We had spoken to her on the Tuesday after they disappeared, 4 days after they disappeared. And all of the parents there were huddled together. The weather conditions were atrocious. It was very clear they were suffering a lot. They were in deep emotional pain. She was one of the few who was quite happy to speak, and she was very optimistic. And she said she had maintained her optimism throughout because she believed that they would come out. She'd believed in the rescuers and the efforts they had made. But she said it was very tough at one point. At about 7 or 8 days in, some of the parents really were beginning to lose hope. She gave us some interesting facts. She said the boys had intentionally gone into the caves. It was something they had planned to do. They just wanted to do some exploring. There's been a lot of comment about why they were there and should they have been there. But she said that the parents had said to her very early on they didn't blame Egg for taking them in. They were very happy that he was there because they felt they could trust him with the lives of their children.
All right. Just very quickly, Tony, we don't have much time, but is there also a conversation happening about the huge cost? Let's not forget there was a diver that died.
There is, and I think that's something that Thailand's going to have to look at very closely. This is the second major disaster in Thailand in the last couple of weeks. More than 40 tourists dead in Phuket in a boat accident. This disaster up here, I think Thailand is going to have to look very closely at how it responds to these disasters and put in place a proper operation so that it can respond quickly next time.
All right. Thank you for that for the moment. Tony Cheng, they're reporting live from Chiang Rai. Thanks. Now, the U.S. administration has missed a court-ordered deadline to return dozens of the youngest migrant children to their parents. 3,000 other children remain in limbo. NBC News' Gabe Gutierrez reports from the U.S. border with Mexico.
A Guatemalan father is in agony in Los Angeles, waiting to be reunited with his son in New York. The last time I tried to speak to him, he says, he was crying and he asked me, "Don't you love me anymore?" The remaining 64 children not reunited for reasons including parents with criminal records or incomplete verification.
Well, I have a solution. Tell people not to come to our country illegally. That's the solution.
This mother, Digna from El Salvador, asked in frustration, why was it so easy for them to take our children, but so hard to give them back? She breaks down when she describes the gut-wrenching moment she said goodbye to her son and daughter more than a month ago. I hugged them and gave them a kiss, and I said, "Don't worry, I'll be back for you."
If the laws are broken, there's a process for that.
We rode along with the Border Patrol as more migrants, including mothers with children, turned themselves in, seeking asylum. Still, the government says arrests at the border were down 18% last month. Has zero tolerance been a deterrent?
Of course it has. Of course it has.
Mario from Honduras was able to see his 10-year-old daughter at an El Paso shelter for the first time in more than a month.
What's been the hardest part? ¿Qué ha sido lo más duro?
Lo más duro ha sido not knowing how she is, he says. While a few have had emotional public reunions, thousands more children remain in limbo.
Gabe Gutierrez reporting there. And still to come for you on Good Morning Europe, France's victory over Belgium inspires wild scenes of celebration as their team books a place in the World Cup final. And over in the Cube,
Elon Musk is in deep water after being criticised for sending a rescue sub to Thailand. We'll have that story after a short break. Your top story in Good Morning Europe, the NATO summit gets underway today. Before landing in Brussels, U.S. President Donald Trump took to Twitter to take a swipe at the European Union and his NATO allies. EU Council President Donald Tusk responded with a stinging rebuke, setting the stage for what are expected to be fractious talks. It was a massive night of football, especially for French fans. Look at that. France beat Belgium 1-0 to secure a place in the World Cup final. They'll play the winner of tonight's match when England face Croatia. Thousands of supporters flooded the streets of Paris and other French cities to celebrate.
While Belgium fans, well, will have to settle for a playoff for third place. It's the third time in the last 6 World Cup tournaments that France has made the finals. Now, our sports correspondent Andy Rubini joins me now. What a night for French fans. It was heartbreaking for the Belgians. I managed to watch at least the first half of it. It was quite exciting, wasn't it?
Pretty much want to ask you what you thought of the game, but I thought it was a very tense World Cup semi-final. We have to give so much credit to this Belgium side. They've been absolutely amazing ever since this World Cup kicked off in Russia. I thought they got off to a strong start. I thought both coaches had the same approach to the game. They both wanted to score this early goal, which led to a very open and exciting first half, which was almost cut in two with Belgium having the upper hand at the start. But then slowly but surely France got back into the game, took this momentum into the second half, eventually scored a goal in the 56th minute thanks to Samuel Umtiti, a deflected header which you saw, and then France stayed solid in defence. Great performance from N'Golo Kante, man of the match display from Raphael Varane, helping Les Bleus keep this clean sheet, and 1-0 was the final score.
I think both teams are considered part of the golden era, aren't they?
Oh yeah, definitely a golden generation from Belgium.
There you go. And what about the game tonight? England take on Croatia. What do you think? How do you think that's going to unfold?
It's very hard to predict. I think this year England are bringing more than just pride to the table. I actually think they're balanced, well structured, pragmatic. I can't believe I can associate an England side to this type of word, but Gareth Southgate has got it right, especially in terms of formation. This 3-5-2 tends to work when both of your fullbacks are willing to make these darting runs forward, and Ashley Young and Trippier are doing this, which is working. It's creating exciting football. It's nice to watch. They'll be up against Croatia. Croatia have looked great in the group stages, but have unfortunately scraped through in their other games. They went to penalties twice, which means that fatigue might kick in. It will be interesting to see how they cope against a young England side seeking to reach their first World Cup final since 1966.
Yeah, an England side who wants to bring it home, as they say. Thank you very much, Andy Rubini, for that. And still to come for you in Good Morning Europe, great relief as all the Thai boys have now been rescued from the cave. But Elon Musk is in hot water over his own rescue plan. And we'll find out why after the break. You're watching Good Morning Europe. Welcome back to the program. Now, going back to one of our top stories, with all the boys safely out of that Thai cave, billionaire Elon Musk, well, he's being criticized for his own rescue plan. Alex, tell us about this.
Well, Tesa, he's known for SpaceX, he's a billionaire, he's an inventor, and many people see him as a colourful character who likes to take the lead on things. Well, when Elon Musk heard that these boys were trapped in the cave, he himself went out to Thailand. This is a tweet from Elon Musk, and he brought with him an experimental submarine, a mini-sub he called it, which he said was ready if needed. He said it's made of rocket parts, that's in keeping with SpaceX, and it's actually named after the Wild Boars, that's the football team. So he brought it out there. But then the Thai official leading the rescue seemed to perhaps dismiss this rescue suggestion, saying, although it's technologically sophisticated, it's not fitting in with our rescue plan. Well, Elon Musk, it would appear from the number and the tone of his tweets, took that a little personally, actually tweeting a correspondence he had with one of the British divers who found the boy, saying, actually, this submarine could work, it is practical. He also disputed that the chap who made the gentleman who made the accusation that it didn't work was not the rescue chief. So this is all getting you talking as well. Was Elon Musk getting in the way? Was he going out of his way to help? One tweet here from we've got here saying, Elon Musk tweeting about the cool submarine he's building to rescue the kids while the kids are being rescued is the most Elon Musk thing ever. But then there is perhaps a serious point from Brian here saying, actually, we should applaud Elon Musk for doing what he's doing and developing this equipment. It could be useful in the future. So a lot of you talking about this. Let us know your thoughts using #TheCube.
Very interesting. Thank you for that, Alex and the Cube team. And thank you for joining us on Good Morning Europe. Do stay with Euronews for all of your top stories. In the meantime, we'll leave you with today's No Comment from France. More of those incredible pictures of celebrations that went long into the night after the football team beat Belgium to make it to the World Cup final.